We're going to try B'siyata D'Shmaya to try to go through a little bit of base and gimel, which I believe most of the olam are more or less somewhere along those lines, either well past it or almost getting there or in the middle, whatever. The truth is, when you learn Shem Beis, you kind of have to learn like the whole Siman and go back, especially when you learn Shiras Kibusa, the Sugya later on coming up, Sif Tes and Yud and everything else. You come back to Sif Aleph again. Sort of it's mushlim, the whole thing. But okay, that's why hopefully the Olam will be doing Chazorah afterwards. When we finish, we'll see if we have time for Chazorah or we do some of the Gzeres D'Rabbanon, which are also negayed to Schita, Melaban, and as well, everything else as well, which are important. We'll see where the time goes. See up the Shmaya. So let's begin. Let's begin with Siv Beis. Siv Beis, come on, Shabbos Ayin Hey Amid Beis, which the Shulchan Aruch over here in the Siv Beis, Haloket Yaboilish Al Gabi Begodim is Be'etzem the Rosh Rambam he brings, and the Gemara clearly is masbid to us that the problem over here, the Gemara says, is because of Maki B'Patish. That seems to be the sugya. Mishumaki b'paltish v'adimidi to kopidalai, the Gemara says, which is of course a very familiar term. This idea of makbid, which we'll get to in a moment. That's what the Gemara seems to say. Rashi explains very simply that the tailor left over some of the stitches and he leaves it over bedafka until the end. It's a way for him to keep the begin in a certain form. The mela, when you remove those stitches, that's considered to be the gemar melocha, that's the makeh b'patish. That's what it is. The Rambam, if you look, has a slightly different mahalach where it's the pieces of wool that are in the garment over there, and that's how the Rambam learns. Most poskim are indeed choishes for both Shittas Rashi and the Rambam. If you look at the Magen Avraham, Shulchan Aruch Harav, Mishnah Berurah, v'chole. Interestingly enough, just so this is a smaller aura, and then we get to something else. The Beis Yosef is medayik from the end of the Rambam. When the Beis Yosef brings the end of the Rambam, that a person is potter if it's derech esik. And it's mashma from there that if you're potter, if you're doing it b'derech esik, that means if you're doing it b'kavana, then avada you're going to be chayiv. So when it says over here, v'hu shekopid aleim, you're makbid on it, it's not the same hakpoda. It's not the same makbid that we said and learned in Sif Aleph, because in Sif Aleph we understood that the makbid over there of not wearing some is you're not going to wear it because it's so dirty. That's why you're makbid over there, and therefore you're not going to wear it without the niyah. That's called being makbid. Over here the pshat is differently. Over here the pshat is you're mechaven to remove, to miyapid the beget. That's what I'm makbid on. Even if I wear it without it, I don't mind wearing it with it. I don't care what's chelik. I'll wear it with this thing. Doesn't bother me. But at the end of the day, I want this to be removed from this beged. That's why you're chayiv. That's how the Beis Yosef learns. That the makbid in Siv Beis is very different than the makbid of Siv Aleph. The Rosh, the Torah, again, I just like the Masakim for the Olam. Those that saw it, I'm sure know this, but it's just good to have a little bit of a Sikkim at the end. The Rosh and the Torah learn that over here in Siv Beis is similar to Siv Aleph, which means when it says in Siv Beis that V'hu sheyakbid aleim, it's the same Agdora as we had in Siv Aleph as well, which means I would not wear it in that case, and that's considered to be the Gemar Melocha in that case. That means if I would wear it, then it means it's really not a big deal, and therefore that's not the problem over here. So the Shulchan Aruch over here in Siv Beis, when he brings the Lashon Rambam, it's very unclear from the Lashon of the Shulchan Aruch. Is he going like how the Beis Yosef learned that makbid in Siv Beis is different than makbid in Siv Aleph, or is he learning similar to the other Rishonim, the Rosh and the Torah, that it is be'etzem the same? So the Taz that you saw says over here that makbid has a din like Sif Aleph, meaning that he wouldn't wear it machmas, or the stitches and things that were left over. So the Fida Taz, there's nobody machlokes the Rambam and everybody else. The Magen Avraham you saw learns, goes with the Beis Yosef, that it's very, very different, and it's only if your kavan is to be yakba the beged, to make different the beged, to take it off, that's when a person would be chayiv. So that is that shaila over there. The Mishnah Berurah quite clearly says makbid means kavana to make it look nice. The Aruch HaShulchan, if you learn that, which I think you did, is that you won't wear it without that in that case. And he ends off, there's no machlokas because everything is MS. Now there's a modig Sholem Eshiv. In Tshuvas Sholem Eshiv in Chelik Beisim and Sama Gimel, he asks the following gasha. And he says that if we're dealing over here in C base, that the chiyuv over here is a chiyuv not because of Melaban, we're coming because of Makeh B'Patish, not because of Melaban. So what's kavana coming into this? What's the kavana being playing such a big part in this issa? At the end of the day, it's a gemar malacha. You are finishing off the suit. You're finishing off the hashloma of whatever it is, the malacha that you started. Maybe that's makeh b'patish. What's the nafkamina if you're having kavana? What's the nafkamina if you're makbid in that case? Not only this, Kollel Shiur goes weiter. He says, look at the Rambam. If you learn the Rambam from halacha tezayin to halacha yud ches, he points out that the Rambam mentions different types of makeh b'patish. For example, one of them is blowing a glass kli. You've been to Tzvas, you see over there how they do glass blowing. There's many different places. You go to Venice, there's an island, you can see glass blowing. It's a gewaldige umnus. It's a very, very, the way to do it. So the Rambam says that you took glass and you blew it into a shape, you're over on makeh b'patish. That's what it is. No mention of makbid. There's no makbid, hakpoda, kavana. It doesn't come in over there, right? It's in the similar sugya that the Rambam is bringing to our halacha and sibes. That's Kollel Moishev's kasha.
The shal is if you see the beged as a finished beged with the yaboilus or whatever.
Nochmal. If
that's the makbid
he's asking, but everyone will be masking if you can't wear it, right? If it's unwearable, then you're finishing off the thing. Or even if it's wearable, but it's the derech to do it, right? I'll give you an example. Makeh b'patish, by the way, it's a moedika sugya. It's a hard sugya. You have to go through like 24 marmakomis in Shas and to see where marmakomis fits in, get the klolim, then learn it. And it's not even one place in Shulchan Aruch. But for example, if you have a plate, you make a beautiful plate. Now you could use this plate now. You can have schnitzel on it. It's gewaldig. But I didn't paint the picture, the tzura on the paint. The Gemara says that tzura is chayiv. Makeh b'patish. I could use it before. It's not finished yet. It's not completed its process. So the suit, the same thing, right? You could say it's wearable. If it's unwearable, let's not the palik about you can be chayiv, right? In a case where it's wearable, but it's not finished. That's not the way that people sell suits. When you go to a suit store, you're not buying a suit that's got stitches in it from the tailor, right? So it's not finished yet. So his question is, if it's considered to be makeh b'patish, then what's the nafka mean if you're makbid or not makbid? This beged is not finished.
Shal is if makeh b'patish is if you're makbid or not. If you're makbid.
Where does this come into makeh b'patish?
If you're makbid, then it's not finished beged. If it's makeh b'patish, if you're not makbid, then it's finished.
So that's exactly Kollel Moishev's kasha. Look at the Rambam when he talks about other things of makeh b'patish, not a word about hakpada. All of a sudden over here, yeah, hakpada. If it's coming because of Melaban, I understand. If it's coming makeh b'patish, so why all of a sudden makbid comes in? Yeah? That's his whole raya. Is look at the other halacha tezayin yudches. You'll see he brings other makeh b'patish, but not a word about hakpada. So why this one yeah and the other one's not? That's his kasha.
Does Rashi not hold?
Huh? No, there's nothing to be makbid on. There's nothing. No, maybe yeah. I'm makbid on the tzur of the kli. I'm makbid on how it looks, how big it is, but it doesn't mention a word. It means hakpada doesn't come into makeh b'patish. So where does it come in over here? It's this kasha. Look at Kollel Shiur, you'll find it over there.
Rashi, there's a similar kasha in Rashi.
Yeah.
Even Rashi that holds its makeh b'patish also holds of the original Kollel.
Correct. Of Sivalef. Very good. Very good, very good, very good. Okay, there's a lot to discuss. I don't know how much we're going to get to. Have a look. Zot the Kollel Shiur, and this is a klal in this gewaldige sif specifically. Zot the Kollel Shiur, yesh lachalik. If you're doing a tikkun in the etzem kli, the gufa kli, like blowing the glass, it means you're making the kli, then there's no room for hakpada. No shaykhs, makbid, not makbid. Metzias is you're making a finish of a kli, that's makeh b'patish. There's no room for hakpada. It doesn't come in bichlal. Masha'enkin over here, when we're talking about loike yaboilus over here, we're talking about here, you're not doing a mice in the gufa kli. You're not really changing the suit. No one's saying you're changing the suit when you take it out. You're not doing any mice in the gufa kli, or the beged in our case. You're just removing something that's not normally there on it when you buy it. Mimela zuk the Kollel Shiur. That's the reason over here why you need hakpada. That's why you need hakpada. Which, by the way,
Let's put on the plate.
And the plate was, I guess, days in the Gemara, maybe nowadays, different trends, but in the days of the Gemara, that no one would buy it or use it in that way, even though it was usable. Meaning, you could take an empty plate that's got no polishing, no coating on it, and of course you can eat schnitzel on it, but it wasn't the derech, no one did it that way. It was the normal thing to make pattern or some kind of varnish or some kind of thing. And if you don't do that, maybe it's not finished yet.
Also the normal way to take out the string.
No. But again, you're not doing a mice with the guf ha-beged. Remember, if you're not doing a mice with the guf ha-beged, Shalom Aleichem said, that's why you need hakbada to make it into a malacha. Otherwise, it's not makib patish. Otherwise, you're not doing anything. Makib patish means I did something, I didn't do anything over here. So the hakbada turns it into a malacha. We had this previously as well, right? Be'etzem and Sifalef, we learned a lot of this idea as well. That when a person is makbid, that turns the near into a mice malaban. So Shalom Aleichem is saying over here as well, if you're doing a mice with the guf ha-kli, makib patish, no hakbada. But over here, since you're not doing a mice with the guf ha-beged, you need to come onto hakbada kidei to the chalois of an actual shem malacha or makib patish to be on it. Which, by the way, is the yesod over here very important. That we have over here a gemar malacha that the mitzad the maisa that you did wasn't so choshev. No one would look at you taking off that piece and say, "Wow, you did something crazy." Mitzad the maisa that you did, it wasn't such a choshev a maisa. But since your hakbada and your kavana, which goes together, it turns it into a malacha. It's a very unusual thing that we find over here, which again we do find in a few places. Al kapanim.
Just to be clear on all the notes, he holds that Rambam holds like Rashi.
No.
He's saying a different gather within, even in Kavana.
Yeah. He's learning why is it that you need hakbada. That's his kasha. Why do you need hakbada?
In the Rambam means Kavana or actual hakbada?
Both. The kavana and the hakbada turns it into a malacha, because without that, you wouldn't have a maisa malacha that's choshev enough to machayiv someone for makab patish. You need to have something for the chalois or makab patish to be chal, which normally by, for example, making a glass kli would be simply making the kli. Here you don't have that. Maybe that's why you need kavana. There's a similarity, yeah. That's maybe the Aruch HaShulchan is saying there's no machlokes, but anyway, everything's emes.
It sounds like he's bringing Rambam over.
Could be. So the maisa. Again? Different type of hakbada, yeah. Not the same hagdora, correct. Price tags. What if you buy a suit, for example, and it has the price tag or the label or the, whatever it is, tied on with a string when you buy it together with sometimes in the hole of the button, it has the price, the materials, whatever it is, the barcode that's tied in that case over there. Do we consider that to be makib padish by removing that? L'chayra we could say, on the pashtus, you'll open it up, Shulchan Aruch and see base. It's a similar thing. No one generally walks around with a price tag. You want to say the label efsha, to say the make, to say the chashivas of the make, right? That you could say, right? We have the same shaila. For example, when if you're toveling a kli, right? So in Yeridei Simukuf Chof, we know that halacha is that when you have to have no chatzitza when you tovel a kli, right? It's not like a golas kelim, pesach tshuva has to be different. You have to do the ganze kli has to be in without any chatzitza. Fine. So what happens if you buy a beautiful dish and all the dish is made in Italy? Now many people want to keep it on because it's geschmack. Shows the oilim, it's not some fake garbage. It's a choshev azach made in Italy. So it could be that you're allowed to tovel it with that sticker because you want it to be on. So I don't know, the label and chanami, so maybe that's normal. But the
not part of the bag, it's not the etzem guf.
What the sticker you talk about? What's over here?
Price tag.
Same thing as CB. It's not etzem the beged either.
No, but the beged was started with that thread. This was put on.
But they leave it on bedavka till the end. Here they put it on afterwards. So Nachanami. And Nachanami, the suit was a gewaldige suit, everything was a gewaldige piece of clothing, otherwise they put on afterwards for the price or for the thing, so therefore there's no problem whatsoever to take off the price tag, you rip it off. Obviously scissors would be a shaila, but with your hands you rip it off, there's no problem whatsoever in that case. Interestingly enough, I don't know why, Reb Nissen Kaveretz Zatzal was machmeh, and he held that if you won't wear the suit without it, then it's a problem, and it's considered to be makib chvaislish. I don't know, but I think that would be mutter to rip it off on Shabbos, to take it off on Shabbos, even if you wouldn't wear it, that wouldn't be a problem. By the way, a lot of the olim asked, what happens when you buy a brand new shirt and it has pins in it? Right? I'm not talking about where it's got, nowadays they don't look so much with pins. Now they use like these plastic sort of nice geschmacka pieces. But even pins, lemaisa, right? Without getting into the shaila of what means ariga and everything else, but to take out the pins of a brand new shirt, is that mutter or not? That is not makib patish to do that. Maybe perhaps be careful how they put the pin in. They generally don't put in 2 stitches. But otherwise from that, it should not be a problem. It just keeps it nice. And there should be no problem with a person taking out the pins of a brand new shirt. So that leads us now. that could be a problem. Because 2 stitches is a shaila of toifa. So the opposite is koreya. So it's a machlikas for showing him whether we do, we don't. I don't want to go into it now because we're not earning it, but it's 2 stitches means it went in and out twice, right? It's not, most times they're not going to do that. Doesn't make a difference.
The X on the tail of a new shirt, of a new suit.
That you stitched there.
Here in the back.
That could be worse.
That's like a label or
yeah,
like
that's worse. That's worse. Because that's intrinsically there.
People sometimes
That's for every makbid. A lot of people are makbid on it.
To keep it there?
Yeah, you sometimes see.
No, nobody wants to keep it there.
No, there are some people, it's clueless, but people who see it sometimes.
That's much worse because it's intrinsic of the beged. Intrinsic of the beged. I'll give you an example, by the way. Pockets, when you buy a suit, the pockets are stitched up. Right? Obviously you can't open those stitches on Shabbos. That's not a poshut ad moed. It's mamash makib b'patish that. It's emistik makib b'patish that. You rip open the stitches so you can use the pocket. So that's emistik makib b'patish. That's not a poshut. Fine. Now we're going to invite you because we don't have that much time, and we'll get to Siv Gimel. We have in Siv Gimel the sugya in Siv Gimel mekaplim keinim b'Shabbos very negei sugya. Starting with the Mishnah mekaplim sakeinim afilu dalad v'hei pa'amim. Rashi says you don't want the creases. And you're going to wear it again that Shabbos. We'll get to that. So let's understand first of all what's the reason. What's the problem over here? Folding clothing on Shabbos Kodesh. Mabaya. Number 1, Rashi nirikim attacking mana, fixing something up. Shulchan Aruch seems to go with that malach. Aruch Shulchan famously brings a Ravid, Tosfos, Tirche Yisera, Hachana. He also uses, which is Agav the Lashon Haran, Tosfos Yontov on the Mishnayos. Brings Kama Rishonim as well. Zgzeira Shema Yovoy Lekibus to Santazak. That's why it's doing over here, by the way, if you wonder what's it doing over here in Shin Beis. That's what it's doing. Tosfos Yontov says, brings a Rishonim, if you're doing something that is the chelik of washing and laundering and everything else, you may come to do washing also. It's a Gzeira. Interesting. No one else really brings that down. Shaloi Keseda, if you do it in the opposite way, Rashi clearly makes no nafkamina how you fold it, doesn't say a chiluk, then it'll be asa. Beis Yosef famously brings on the Madcha and the Rav Yah that the only issa is to fold it kaseda arishin, shaloi kaseda is going to be muta. Shulchan Aruch over here brings it as a gei shoymim. There's no real tam in the Madcha why he says what he says. In other words, why shaloi kaseda specifically is muta. If you look at the Vilna Gaon and the Gra, he says it's not such a tikkun. There's no kiyum in that way. That's how the Vilna Gaon learns pshat in why that is the case. The Das Torah, the Marsham, brings this heter is only if tomorrow you're going to fold it back to its original seder. But if you don't zuk the Marsham, then this becomes the new seder. Which means if you're going to fold it, we'll get to talis, but if you fold the talis shaloi kederech rishon and you leave it that way till next Shabbos, the Marasham will hold that's asa. Because at the end of the day, this becomes the new seder. So it has to be that Motzah Shabbos, Kollel Shiur bias, or Sunday morning, whatever it is, you fold it back on its original folds. Then in a Hanami, you taka did it in the opposite way. Fine. Again, there's no minimum. Whenever you're going to do it, okay, you forget. If my kavanah is I'm folding it this way, so that Motzah Shabbos, Sunday, Monday, whatever it is, the next time I come to Bismedrish, I'm going to do it. That's going to be good enough in that case. If what? No. Just berach. Now let's just before we get to Mamash Halach and Amaisa, let me just.
Not one fold could be on the crease. Meaning, yeah.
Berach. You don't have to be makbid every single one. As long as berach. Sometimes the talis falls into its original creases. Say that, I didn't do anything. Now, if you look at the Shulchan Aruch seems to have a very different ged over here. And Ois Ches, he learns a completely different pshat be'etzem. We could spend hours just on what Machlokes Shulchan Aruch and the Shibur is, but the Shulchan Aruch seems to learn a very different pshat. In specifically the sugya over here, that he learns that the reason why you're not allowed to fold something on the creases is you're doing it in order to straighten out the creases. So even Odom Echad be'etzem should be also in that case. So what taka is enough community between Adam Echad and 2? The answer is one person, the crease is straightened by themselves, and 2 people straighten. They have to do it in that case. Now, if you learn the Shulchan Aruch, sounds like he's being cholik on Rashi, Sounds like he's neged Rashi, because Rashi clearly says that Odom Echad is allowed because it doesn't do a good job. Shulchan Aruch Harav seems to say not that way, so it doesn't make sense that he'd be Cholek on Rashi in that case. However, the Makar of the Shulchan Aruch Harav, Vada is Shitas Rambam, right? Chobeis, look it up. That the Rambam seems to be the Makar for the Shulchan Aruch Harav, and the Shulchan Aruch Harav obviously holds that when the Rambam says, or the Pashto, it means folding it in order to straighten it in that case. So why Taka did the Graz? Why did the Shulchan Aruch Harav? Why didn't he learn like Rashi? Because he held that folding it in order that it shouldn't crease, that's not such a tikkun in that case, right? So why Taka, two people are going to be asa? Right? Even if at the end of Yesha Lahachlev is asa, what's the reason? That's why he explains, Shulchan Aruch Harav explains that if him, it's the actual straightening of the beged to make it straight, to make it whatever it is, that's the tikkun. The Shulchan Aruch Harav holds that the tikkun over here is when you want to straighten your beged from the creases, that's what it is. So it comes out that the machlokes of Mishnah Berurah and the Shulchan Aruch Harav over here is, what is the geder of the tikkun? The Mishnah Berurah holds preventing the kilkul. That's the tikkun. And when you do something to prevent a tikkun, to prevent a kilkul, that's mamela going to be asa. Shulchan Aruch Harav holds, no, I don't need a positive action of tikkun. Just the very fact that I'm doing something, that alone is considered to be a tikkun, even if it's not a positive action. I'll give you an example. Shulchan Aruch and Shid Lamed Vav, it's a gewaltige Marmokken, by the way. Shid Lamed Vav Sif Yud Aleph Mishnah Berurah Sikot Nun Dalet brings down the following: are you allowed to take a branch from a tree, and are you allowed to put it into water to stop the branch from withering? Right? Let's leave out the shaila of the water. It was prepared before Shabbos, a tircha shaila. Fine. So the Mishnah Berurah over there is actually machmir, and the Shulchan Aruch Harav is actually going to be mekel. And the reason why that machlokas over there, and again, I'm not going to go now into where that's coming from, Ein Sham, I gave you the Marmakomas, is the same machlokas over there, is the same machlokas over here, the Mishnah Berurah and the Shulchan Aruch Harav. What are we looking for that makes the Issa? What is the Asoid, what makes it Asa? Is it something that you're just preventing something? Or is it a positive maisa that you're doing over there? Now, the maisa, when it comes to all folding, you look at the lashon of the kolbay. You find similar, yeah.
Why would practically going to come to crease?
But that's not his ikab pshat. His ikab pshat is not what he says differently. It could be Maram is that way, but Shulchan Aruch is very, very stark in a different kivun. Yeah, it could be. They overlap. It's true that they overlap, but there's for sure Shulchan Aruch, Mishnah Berurah, and how you learn the yesod of what the issue is over his. Now, when it comes to the Maisi, look at the kolboy, and you look at the Aruch HaShulchan and everything else. Nowadays, we don't use irons, we don't use, the olden, going back a few years, people used to have a contraption in their homes where they used to have this contraption. I'm not going to bring it in to show the oilam, whatever it is, it'll be geschmack, right? It's mamish, this a press. It's a press that's connected to electricity. It goes hot. You put your pants, your trousers inside there on the creases. Overnight, you put it on, it's very warm. You don't put it on hot, you put it on a little bit warm. You come the next morning, it's machaya. Unbelievable, right? That's how they did it. And I'm not going back that many years, they used to have that. We don't have these things. We don't have these big presses. We don't have clamps. We don't have all the things that they used to do and things like that. So it comes out lemaisa that most of what we're doing and our begodim are very different to what the begodim of their days used to be. My Rosh Yeshiva Rav Scheinberg used to say that nowadays you don't have to check your tzitzis, the talis godel, before you put it on, which is what the oilam does, right? The shaylas, they're doing it, for that. They're doing it because it's a good opportunity to walk around the bismedrash and shmuz a pistol before davening or during davening, whatever it is. But the point is, people put on the shoulder and check the tzitzis. Rav Scheinberg, you don't have to do that anymore. Why? He said, when was the last time you opened up your talis bat and you find your tzitzis snapped in the middle of the night? Just snapped. Wow, unbelievable. You ever saw such a thing? It never happened. Why? Because our begodim, our tzitzis, they're so stark, it doesn't happen. They get loose. You have to tighten it. So, Lav Dafka, that's going to be, first of all, it's a problem on Shabbos, by the way, right? That's, in Kippur, I once saw the guy, Mamish, in the middle of Al-Chetz. He's in the middle of Al-Chetz, and he's Toivel V'Shevetz B'Yodoi. Mamish, in the middle of Al-Chetz, he's strengthening the knots over there. Oy Al Kaponim, nowadays, our begodim don't really have what they used to have, which basically means that most of our begodim are lemaisa muta to fold, even on the creases. The oilam ataka makpid when it comes to talis for sure. Why is this minig oilam is to be machme could be, but I don't see the reason really why a person should have to be machme in that case, especially if you look at the Gedolei Poskim. For example, I'll give you an example. The Shevet HaLevi has a moedik tshuva on this, like סימן Vov, where he says there's not enough gemina between our colors of begodim when it comes to all of these things, right? White and black and all of these things. Rav Vosner is very, very clear about all of these things. The Beis Yosef, again, like I told you, brings the Kol Boy. You saw the Aruch HaShulchan as well. Now it's true. You look at the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, you look at Rav Vosner, you look at the Ben Ish Chai, you look at even Machzor Eliyahu. By the way, the Sfadim on ganzen Mekel. Chacham Ben Sina Bashol in Olet Zion, Mizrach Shemesh also completely Mekel. The Sfadim are on ganzen Mekel in this case. Yeah, but the Sfadim Lemaisa took on to be completely Mekel. Yeah, but the Sfadim took on completely to be Mekel in this case. Al Kaponim, even Ashkenazim, there's a massive mokoim for a person to be Mekel because again we have so many Rishonim, V'achroinim that hold, especially Aruch HaShulchan. My Kabbalah Psak came from many of Scheinberg. If Scheinberg held that we paskin like an Aruch HaShulchan over Mishnah Berurah. The Aruch HaShulchan was a Rav. Aruch HaShulchan was a Rav, the Mishnah Berurah wasn't a Rav. It's like Tzadik Ador, Godel Ador, Kol HaTorah Kula Avada, but Lemaisa, he wasn't a Rav. He wasn't a practicing Rav. The Aruch HaShulchan was. Scheinberg and Rav Moshe also, by the way, had the same shita. Rav Moshe also held. But Rav Scheinberg told us many times, we paskin like an Aruch HaShulchan over a Mishnah Berurah, especially when it comes to a minig, because he knew the minhagim because he was a Rav. But there's definitely a huge mokim to be mekel. You're right, the minig is to be machman by tareisim. I'm not here to be cholik on the minig. I'm not telling anyone to go out there and do against the minig. But I'm just saying that there's a mokim to mekel. I just have to go, so I just want to finish up. So maybe there's definitely a big mokim for a person to be making in that case. Thick items that don't fold anyway, there's no shaila whatsoever. Putting a shirt on a hanger, there's no problem with that also, even because it naturally falls into its own folds. Using a shoe tree on Shabbos, by the way. Shoe tree is a metal or wooden thing that you stick into the shoe and you finish wearing it. The Minchas Yitzchak has a tshuva that he says that if you come out of the rain, so then it's a problem. Because the rain will make the leather shoe, if you're wearing leather, it's going to make it really go, bad. You put in that shoe, that could be a shayla b'akar b'patish. But akaponim, if you just machzik the shape of the shoe, that's not a problem whatsoever. Now, avada putting a shtrammel into the box, shteitzach avada is mutter. There's no problem with that whatsoever. Folding the collar, if you want to put your tie on and you fold the collar, if it was up and you want to fold it in, or for example, you get your shirt from the dry cleaners, or even not from the dry cleaners, you ironed it, whatever. So now if you have a double cuff shirt and it's flat, straight, and now in order to wear your cufflinks, you fold it over and put your cufflinks in, that's not a maisa folding. You're not makbid on that. You want it to be folded over, that's true, but you're makbid on the folds, not necessarily. It looks a bit clean, it looks a bit nice, could be, but that's not really the malacha that they were talking about. That's not what they meant. So therefore, that will be okay to take your pants or trousers at the end of the day and, sort of fold them over in a way, you put them over a bench or over a chair in a way that the folds, sort of nicely match each other, not a problem, right? All of these things are be'etzem going to be mutter in that case. You don't have to worry.
You take your pants, start with the pants, meaning you take the two ends.
So that maybe not start from the middle and just do it that way. Don't do such a, that's just, exactly. And Be'ez Hashem, next time B'siyat Shmaya, hopefully, we'll get to Dalet, Hey, Vav, we'll try to go through the next, even Be'ez Hashem, beginning of next week, B'siyat Shmaya Shkoyach.